All right, good morning, everybody. Thank you for joining us this morning and for our event, How RPA Will Transform the Accounting Industry. My name is David Lowe. I am the Senior Program Manager here at the California Society CPAs. And I oversee all of our student outreach activities for the Society for the entire state. I feel like I'm a little out of my league here because I feel like I'm probably the only one on this call or on this event here that does not have an accounting background. I know next to little to nothing about accounting, and I majored in social sciences, so that's my background. I can barely balance a checkbook. But I'm glad we have some experts on RPA here today, and I'll turn it over to April Morris really quick, but then I'll have her introduce her students. But April Morris is an accounting faculty at California State University, Fullerton. And we were introduced to each other through our accounting education committee. She was kind enough to speak to our accounting education committee here at CalCPA. So I thought with RPA, that's something that she has a great deal of expertise in, and as well as her students, so have taken her classes. So I'll turn over to April, and then April can introduce her students. So
great.
Take it away, April.
All right, thanks so much, David. I really appreciate it. Well, today we're going to take a dive into the world of RPA and what it means not only to you, if you're students or practitioners in terms of accounting, but how it's used. And one of my students, Heather, is going to be showing you one of her robots or one of her bots that she has recently written in my class. So today we're going to hear first from Tuan Nguyen. He's the automation manager at PwC Labs. Tuan is also a graduate of Cal State Fullerton a couple years ago. And then we're going to hear from Heather Biddinger, who is also a CSUF student currently and recently completed her internship at PwC. I know Tuan has a hard stop at 10:30, so we're going to put Tuan on first to talk about RPA and accounting, why and how it's used, and some other topics. So Tuan, go ahead. Yep, we can see it.
All right, perfect. So hi everyone, my name is Tuan Nguyen. I'm an automation manager within PwC Labs. That's PwC's emerging technology lab, and we're focused on just bringing the latest and greatest to both internally at PwC and also to our clients. So the past 2 to 3 years, I've been focusing on our citizen-led efforts within PwC, helping drive automation and also RPA, and then also expanding out now to our other ETL tools and everything else that's self-service in nature. And so I know we have a very short time together today, so I just want to jump straight into it. So first and foremost, I want you all to just close your eyes, right? And imagine yourself as a college student coming out of university. And up until this point, you've been doing all your calculations by hand on pen and paper, right? And you walk into the office and now you see a terminal at your desk. And what you see is now a program that you can actually write out your calculations on, and it'll actually automatically calculate it for you. And this is probably revolutionary for you, right? It's intuitive, it's gonna save you a ton of time and probably a ton of paper and pen. And so if you haven't realized already, right, that application turned out to be Excel, right? Previously known as Lotus 1-2-3. And if you can believe it or not, Excel came out over 35 years ago, right? And since then, we've had the World Wide Web invented. We've had the iPod introduced, right? Which was probably my first experience with something digital that I originally enjoyed or experienced in an analog format. And then we had the iPhone introduced, which really has changed the way, right, that we've interacted with computers. Most of the time now, the interaction between the end user and an application is through mobile means. And in 2015, we've actually had supercomputers that are 30 times less powerful than human brains. Now, despite all these technological advances, in 2020, we are still using Excel, right, for the majority of our work when we get into the office. And it's expected within the workplace that when you start, you're going to know Excel and other office-related applications. And so why is that, right? Why over the past 35 years are we still using Excel? And so what makes Excel so timeless is that it has broad applicability, right? Not only within the finance and accounting function, but in the research environment, other ways that you actually can use Excel. The ease of use, right? Going in, typing out a formula as you would on pen and paper, and getting that calculation makes it very intuitive. Now, there's probably a learning curve when you first started because there's different formulas, but at its core, it's very intuitive to use. and accessibility. So if you have a Windows PC, which majority of us do, then you have Excel already installed as well. And so because of these three things, it's become an industry standard across the board, and that's why it's expected of us to know it once we enter the workplace. I know. Does that mean Excel is our only option, right? When we come to the workplace? Definitely not, right? On the other side of the spectrum, these technological advances have allowed us to create these huge enterprise software, right? That have allowed us to automate a lot of different things from reporting, month-end closing, and all the like. But because these are huge enterprise software applications, there's a lot of development that goes into them, right? I have to gather business requirements from my users. I have to do an analysis of the processes to understand, is that the most efficient process? And then I have to develop it with my team of developers, implement it, and then test and support it, right? If you're using a huge ERP system like SAP and Oracle, that works out. You're still going to have a lot of investment in terms of cost, right? Otherwise, you're going to be building from scratch, and you're going to have to build out this entire application for your organization. Despite all that, you're going to still face significant challenges, both from the business and technology sides. So from the business side, if I don't understand my business requirements, it's going to be very hard for me to build out the application that's going to be most useful for my users. I might run into technological hurdles. The system that I'm trying to interact with doesn't have an API. So how do I get around that, right? It's not going to be the most reliable means, because when I reach out to the vendor that I'm trying to connect to, it's not a supported means to connect to them. Time to deployment is going to be substantial because you're going through all these steps, right? Versus, let's say, just trying to build out a work paper in Excel. Cost is a huge factor here because you have to hire all of the personnel that's associated with it, as well as train your staff on how to use the system, and then also buy the platform itself. And because of all these things, we're going to make sure these applications have all the bells and whistles that we need now and in the future. And because of that, it makes it very, very complex to learn. If any of you have tried to learn Excel, it took a little bit of time to learn it, right? But you got through it. Now, when you go into an organization and you try to learn something like Blackline or other complex systems, it's going to take you quite a bit of time, months, if not 6 months. So these are all things that you've ran into, right? When we're trying to learn, okay, what options are there for me to try to automate a business process that I have that I'm spending a lot of time on? And so is there a happy medium between the two, between something that's self-service to the average individual and the enterprise application? And really, there hasn't been a lot up until this point, and that's really where RPA comes in. So RPA, in its nutshell, is software robots that automate manual repeatable tasks, normally performed by a human. So these tasks are things like clicking, typing into. If you've ever used a macro before within Excel, you can basically turn on the macro, perform your actions, and then click end. And then if you play back that macro, it will perform those set of steps, right? Very similarly, RPA will work in a similar fashion. I can turn on a recorder, I can automate my steps and run it back, or I can build it from scratch going through step by step. And so this has really changed the way that we look at automation and software development, because there's a lot of benefit to using RPA as a software. Cost savings. So I don't need to hire a full-on development team to build something and know programming languages, because the software is accessible to the end user. We have higher quality and accuracy. So now, instead of, let's say, spot checking a bunch of files, I can actually check every single file, because I'm not going through and doing it manually. I'm having the bot do the first pass for me. A reduction in development time. So once again, we talked about having all of those prerequisites and investments in developing an enterprise grade application. You're not going to need to do that, because you can focus on task automation and then string those together to have an automated end-to-end process. And then better control and flexibility. So you're not restricted by the business requirements defined at the time. If you have additional capabilities or improvements that you want to integrate later on, you can definitely do so quickly, because the software that RPA provides is accessible to the business end user, and it has a low code environment that reduces the time of development. Now, when we look at the use cases across the board, both within public and private, we're seeing a lot of different things, right? RPA is a fairly, it's not an immature software, but it's fairly new per se. And so a lot of people are finding different ways to do it every day. And within the public accounting sphere, we're seeing a lot of it's used within tax and insurance. So within the tax function, tax compliance is a huge, huge component of RPA and where we're finding a lot of the use cases. And it's because there's just high volume, right? You've all heard of busy season and how much time we spend performing tax return preparation for all of our clients. RPA helps immensely in that practice because it's able to allow us both to complete the forms and a lot of the preparation and calculations. But for the more low complexity items like tax extensions and other things that we can do year over year on a continuing basis, we can actually have the bots do that and then we just review it. So we've created bots that run unattended in the background where it will go through into the tax preparation software and actually fill out these extensions for us, print it out for us, and then put it into our document repository for us to review in the morning. So unlike humans, bots don't need to rest, right? We can run them 24/7 and they won't take over our computer so that us as humans can focus on more value added work. On the assurance side, we're seeing a lot of it for more so template generation. So if I have a risk control matrix or I have other control templates that I want to fill out, then I can actually complete the templates first in a predefined format and then have bots generate those templates over and over again for each individual organization. So not only does this help speed up the onboarding of engagements, but allows us to also reduce the amount of error that might occur because people are transposing data from one document to another. Additionally, we're seeing a lot of automation around tieouts and reconciliations. So this doesn't mean that we can have the bots do our review for us, right? First and foremost, we want to make sure that we're having the amount of review that is required with our industry. And so what we're actually having bots do is go in and checking the reconciliations and tieouts and identifying and focusing in on the things that might be anomalies first and foremost. So instead of having me go through an entire document and then realizing at the very end that, hey, there's an issue here that I need to go back through and regenerate an entire document and then review the entire thing again, I can actually have a bot go through, check the entire thing for me, identify really quickly that there's an anomaly at the very end, fix it first before I do a full review of the entire document. And now there's obviously, software out there that you can generate once again to do this, right? But if I'm, just a staff and I'm trying to perform something, RPA software makes it very, very easy for you to just build something very quickly for your specific purpose, and then you can build out your business logic. So not only does this help the individual user save time, but it also helps them understand the process as well, because they need to understand, okay, if I do a certain set of actions, what would I expect on the back end? So that's a really important key to automation is how do you actually upskill your organization without losing that knowledge, right? We want to make sure that automations aren't a black box, and automation software these days also come with programs where you can upskill your organization so that they can understand how to review and audit a workflow. Now, on the private side, we're seeing a lot of different automations, but they really fall into two buckets, and it really depends on the type of deployment model that you're looking for. So what you'll hear a lot of these days is citizen-led automation. So not just having your developers in your organization build out enterprise-wide automations, but also allowing your business users accessibility to these automations. There's a lot of risks that come with that as well, but the benefits heavily outweigh it in the long term because now you're upskilling your entire population of staff, but also giving them the capability to automate their daily tasks. So if you're running a citizen-led effort, then you're going to see a lot more administrative bots in the beginning. These are bots related to time and schedule related automations, email automations. So being able to have a bot check for new emails coming through, sort them and file the files down to your desktop, or do reconciliations or other functions that they need to do, like emailing them out to the proper groups. We also see compliance checks, so things like CPE checks, PTO checks, things that don't necessarily save time, but help the average individual end user find things quicker. And where this actually saves time on the back end is, you would normally have HR folks or IT folks actually help with this. So instead of reaching out, spending time on the phone or in the chat, finding out this information, they can actually just open up a bot, run it really quickly and find the information that they need. So in the individual time frame, it's probably not saving that much time, 30 seconds to a minute. But when you have 55,000 staff across the entire organization running these things in the aggregate, you're saving an substantial amount of time. You're also seeing information searches. So being able to go out to Google, scrape the top 10 news articles, compiling them in a format that's branded for your organization, and then sending them out to your clients so that you can show them and stay connected and generate those leads that you need to generate for your business. And then IT utilities. So most of the time, your IT department will actually create utilities like clearing your internet browser cache or other things like that that will help you optimize your computer. You can actually build out bots to do this as well, and then also share that amongst your organization. So once you've automated a good amount of these administrative bots, right, which we would consider low-hanging fruit because they're task-based automations that apply to a wide base of users, most of the time we're actually seeing people transition into function-focused, or in parallel start developing things that are function-focused. These are things that are going to save your organization a substantial amount of time, right, because they do it every year in high volume. So month-end closing, being able to reduce that time it takes you to close at the every month or every quarter from a set of days, like let's say 7 days, to down to 2 to 3, because a lot of the things that you need to do can be automated, and then all that needs to be done is the review and other things that are more subjective in nature. We also have account reconciliations, AR and AP processing. So being able to scan documents as they come through and transpose them into your software. So a lot of the times RPA is not just used individually, but also in conjunction with document understanding and other software that can actually OCR a document and then take the text out. Many times we receive documents that may not be in electronic format. Let's say if you receive them through the mail or through fax, you can actually take these documents, scan them in, and have a bot go through, read it, and then enter the information into your ERP system. And additionally, that applies to AR aging analysis. So having a bot go through, understand where your aging analysis should be focused, and then sending emails out to those clients if necessary. So it allows you to apply that 80-20 rule, where you can really allow your staff to focus on the clients that are going to be the most use of their time. We talk about swivel chair on legacy automation, so this one is a little bit confusing to most people. But if you think about a large multinational organization, over time they're going to acquire a lot of other organizations. Not only do they acquire their products, their brand, and their people, but also, unfortunately, their technology. And a lot of the times, as I mentioned, the technology does not talk to each other easily. If you don't have an API, then what you're going to have to do is have someone sitting there and actually key in information from one system to another. And this actually happens a lot of the times when you contact a contact center or a call center. And when you call in, they'll actually pull your information from one system, your order of information from another system, and then the tracking information from a third system, right? And so what the bots can actually do is when orders come in, the bots can pick it up and then actually enter it into the ERP system that the majority of your organization works on. So it doesn't require the organization to do this huge revamp to consolidate all the systems, right, which is very risky in of itself. And it really provides that stopgap to be able to allow the systems to talk to each other instead of just hiring that full-time individual who's going to sit there and key things into one system into another. All right. And then the last two here we have is reporting preparation and review and regulatory compliance. A lot of the times, especially within our transfer pricing practice, they have to generate a lot of documents, right, in regards to the engagements. And so they've actually developed software that helps them generate a lot of these documentations. All you have to do is fill out key fields, and then it'll generate all the documentation for you. That's been a huge effort, and people have actually been able to generate new documents very quickly with RPA, just because you can fill out a template and then tell the bot to read from Excel and then populate that template. So things like that, right? Just being able to create a really quick proof of concept before integrating it into the full system, because that's really what RPA is for, is giving you that short-term stopgap until you can integrate those features into your enterprise application. And then with the regulatory compliance, these things are just growing year over year, right? Especially when you're dealing with European territories that have to deal with GDPR. You want to make sure all these things are included or checked off, so that, you know, at the end of the day, you're not getting some kind of notification from a regulatory body that's saying that you're not in compliance. And so these things are ripe for automation opportunities, and things that we actually see in a lot of our clients as well. So that's really the gist of RPA, right? It's really giving the individual and both the organization the capability to build out the automated process and develop the automation opportunities that they see. So we talked about in the beginning where it stemmed from both Excel, right, which was accessible to the end user, to an enterprise grade application, which could support heavy loads and also volume of transactions. And RPA could really do that, right? It's intuitive enough where you can drag and drop activities like clicking into, typing into, and other things, but also robust enough where you can build enterprise grade applications where it can process, tens, if not hundreds of thousands of transactions a year and still maintain the accuracy and reliability that you want. And that's why I really think that we're on, the frontier of a change again. So if 35 years ago, Excel really changed the way that we did work, I think RPA is going to do the same for us because it's changing the things that we do, not necessarily what we do, because we're not focusing on data entry and other things that are more repetitive and manual in nature. We're going to be focusing on more things that are value added, like analysis and other things that are going to not be able to be done by machines because they're more subjective in nature. All right, so with that, I'd like to open up the floor to see if there's any questions.
So audience, go ahead and feel free to type in your questions in the chat there. And we're waiting for questions. Tuan, I guess my question as a outsider, I guess, to the accounting industry, in terms of the adoption though, what are you seeing the adoption trends for RPA though in the accounting industry? I know usually Big Four are kind of on the cutting edge of the adoption of any kind of new technology though, but what are you seeing in terms of the trends for other accounting firms or the industry?
Yeah, I mean, the RPA vendors in the market, Automation Anywhere, Uipath, Blue Prism, are the major players, right, have made it really, really accessible for any end user to be able to utilize these, right? They all have a community edition where you can just pick it up and utilize it as long as your organization is below a certain threshold. And I think that really makes it more accessible to everyone. It'd be very much different, right, if you were running it off of like an enterprise based like license model where only the biggest companies, right, are going to be able to afford this. So we're actually seeing a lot of adoption because to run a proof of concept, you don't really need anything. You can just download the software and utilize it for yourself. And so we're actually seeing a lot of adoption, not only within the public accounting firms, but also a lot of our clients and smaller clients as well. You'll see a lot of them now have dedicated innovation and technology groups, right, that are focused on not just RPA, but other automation opportunities through existing ERP softwares and also through softwares that aren't RPA related, like ETL tools or visualization tools. And so there's a lot of innovation within the space. It's really interesting because most of the time as a service provider, we'd be the first to market to really see these things, right? But because these things are rolling out so new and because there's so many new capabilities coming out, we see a lot of these companies building up their own teams to really scale out their capabilities. And I know we had a question. So what kind of subjective things could RPA not perform? So when it comes to RPA, I talk about bots and I say that they're dumb in nature, right? Because you need to tell them exactly what to do. There cannot be any ambiguity. And so if there is a circumstance where you might say, well, sometimes if something happens, then it goes down one path, and sometimes if the same thing happens, it goes down another path, right? And the non-technical analogy that I always give is, if I ask you what kind of pizza do you want, right? That might change on a day-to-day basis if I ask you every day, right? You're probably not going to want pepperoni every day or cheese every day. Now, if I told the bot that and I said, hey, if David asks what kind of pizza, if you ask David what kind of pizza he wants, I want you to automatically go and order cheese, right? But David's preference might change day to day, and so the bot doesn't know that. It can't understand how to make that determination, and a user may need to gather more information from David to understand that. So those are all things that you can build in, but it's not going to be a reliable way of automation. So another one, so from the Q&A, you mentioned that Excel macros are some repetitive tasks reported and repeated, but I get the sense that the software you're talking about is beyond this capability. Are you saying that PwC writes software solutions that your clients can use to perform these repetitive tasks? Yeah, definitely. There are service offerings that PwC offers that will come in. They'll assess the processes. understand which ones have high potential for automation, and then help them build those automations out. I think that's the key thing to understand is, this software is so exciting and new that people try to use it to solve anything, right? I have a hammer and everything starts looking like a nail. And so it's really important to be able to first take a look at your processes and ask yourself, okay, can I make this process better, right? Business process reengineering to make sure that you're cutting out steps that aren't necessary or redundant, and then trying to automate that process. But before you do so, you got to ask yourself, okay, is this process highly repetitive, right? Does it have concrete business logic? And does it have a lot of exceptions? And exceptions is the one thing that most people forget. And that's, what are all the ways that this process can go wrong, or all the ways that it can end, right? And so a really good example here is for tax preparation software, you'll put all your information, and at the very end, before you file it out to the taxing authority, you can validate it and then understand through a diagnostic all the things that are wrong with it that might cause issues or might have it kicked back when you e-file it. And those diagnostics can number in the thousands, right? Because there's so many things that can go wrong when you're completing a tax form. And so there was an initiative to try to build a bot to actually rectify a lot of these diagnostics. But then you got to start asking yourself, okay, for every little sneak situation or error that comes through, I have to build a bot that's going to respond to it. And then you ask yourself, okay, the benefit of that versus the effort and the expense of doing it may not be equivalent, right, or greater than. And so this is compounded because every year your tax forms change. And so that's something else that you need to take into consideration is how mature are my processes and how often do I expect them to change? So all these things come together to really give you an automation score to understand, hey, should I actually proceed with this automation opportunity? Great questions.
Okay, I don't see any other questions coming through, and I know, Tuan, you have a hard stop coming up, though, and I want to respect that.
Yeah.
But thank you so much, though, for coming on.
Thanks,
though.
Tuan. That was great.
Really great
Yeah,
information that you're
definitely. Okay, great. Have a great day, Tuan. Perfect.
Thank you. Take care, everyone.
Yep. Thanks. All right, so back to our agenda here. So one of the things that we've been doing at Cal State Fullerton, and I know many of you are students, but in terms of the evolution of technology in business, not just accounting, but in business, we've developed classes that teach a lot of these advanced technologies to our accounting students. And Heather is one of the students in my emerging technologies class, where she's learned, so far she's learned Tableau, Python, Uipath, which is the robotic process automation. We're just getting into Alteryx, and we're going to follow that on the heels with some Power Query and Power BI. But I wanted Heather to share her experiences with you because I know many of you are students. So I think it's important that you kind of walk through her trek on RPA, see what she's been doing. What does a robot look like? What issues did she have? Watch the robot run. You'll see just how fast this thing goes. So with that, I'd like to turn it over to Heather. So Heather, go ahead, take it away.
All right. Good morning, everybody. My name is Heather Biddinger, and like April said, I am a senior at Cal State Fullerton, and I interned and received a full-time offer with PwC. So I'm going to share my screen. Okay, so for our class, we're working with emerging technologies, and the intention behind it was to go to the SEC website and search up company filings. And then from there, we were interested in Berkshire Hathaway and what their investments was. So looking at this takes a couple clicks. And what happens is that we find that there is all of these different filing dates, obviously. So under their documents, and we use an HTML file, we can see what Berkshire Hathaway invests in, as well as if they have any voting privileges. All of this information is contained in the SEC website. So from a student's perspective, this is great because I'm young and have the ability to invest, and because he's so well known, following his investments is a great idea. So in our class, what we did was we wanted to build a robot that would essentially automate this process. It would go to the SEC website, it would click through for us. So my robot looks like this. So this is Uipath. This is the program software that we use in class. And this is the outline. Now this whole outline only does one small portion. So what I had to do was essentially tell the robot what I wanted it to do. And coming from a perspective of a student who has no experience in coding and no experience with robots and no experience in this, I was absolutely terrified. However, I had some success. So when you're working with the robot, when you're working with Uipath, it's really easy because it makes it very user friendly. As you can see, there's these buttons here. So you can just drag and drop different simulations, that different sequence events that you want it to perform. So I had it go to the SEC website, and one of the benefits about this is there's a recording feature on Uipath that allows me to open a browser, determine where I need to click, what I can type. So in the beginning, I just sent it to the SEC website, and then I needed to tell it what to do. So it was very specific. So I had to click on company filings, and then I needed to input Berkshire Hathaway. Okay, so spelling errors come into case here. I'm not the best at spelling, so the first time I did this, I didn't spell it right, and I had to go back and change it. One of the great things about this is you can see the little input here. So instead of having to retell my robot and rerunning a recording screen, I can just edit it in here. So it's nice when you find your little errors. I asked my robot to click on search and go through and go down to the company filings. It needs to know what to input, and then it needs to know to search again. So all of these are separate tasks, as you can see over here, and they each perform a different function. So I broke it down and made sure it did one thing, and then the next thing, and then the next thing. So instead of making one sequence where it opened the website and did the filings and opened the document, I broke it down so into 3, 4 multiple different ones. The reason being is when I have errors, instead of deleting that whole sequence, I can delete out or edit the parts that I needed to. So that was really important for me as a student because, like Tuan said, there's a steep learning curve. So I'm still in that learning curve. After the documents were pulled up, what I asked my robot to do was, okay, I want to make use of this information. So I used one of the Uipath parts that say data scraping, and essentially what it does is it takes the data off of the website, and then I need to tell it what to do with it. So I asked the Uipath Studio to scrape that data and then import it into an Excel file for me. So, and then I had it go back so that from here, it hits the back button twice and it restarts on the next document. So at this point, what I'm going to show you is all the way up until that point, and then I'll show you what struggles I had moving forward to the next document. So I'm going to run my robot. So it's going to show you the SEC website opening. Now it's clicking to company filings, inputting the Berkshire Hathaway, searching, clicking, searching for 13F and clicking on documents, going in, it's now scraping the data, and then it goes back. So what I did, so this has ran, and it will tell me that I don't have any errors, no errors found, which is perfect. So it took about 20 seconds for it to run, which is a lot quicker than when I had to do it manually. So the next part, after it scraped the data, I also asked it to input it to an Excel file. So I named a data sheet, and what happens is my robot will import all the information that it scrapes off of that file that I told it to and give it to me in an Excel format for easier use. So you can see here, this data table is exactly the same as we found from here. So whenever you're looking at a website and it looks something like this, programming with a Uipath and using a bot, you have the ability to end up with a nice, neat spreadsheet that has your column headings, so I know what I'm looking at, and then I can use this for anything that I can use Excel with. Or if you do data visualization, this is a good way to pull and scrape information off of the internet and then use that for another program. So after I got the basis of the program, I wanted to start playing around with it a little bit. So I started to loop it. So one of the things that I found is that when I ask it to look on the website for documents, what it does is it pulls up a selector, and I'm going to change this real quick. So I'm going to indicate on screen. Let me go back real quick. So if I indicate, so if I find that something's wrong and I indicate on screen, okay, I want it to click documents. Originally, when I do that, my selector, if you see here, it's going to have a table row too. That's because it knows that it's clicking document off of the second row of this data table. The problem is when I ask my robot to repeat this process, not every document is going to be in data row 2. Then it'll be in 3, 4. So I can replace this with a wildcard. That was one of the things that as a student was difficult, because I had to pay attention to all of the little things. So I was worried about, is the HTML one the same? So I did the same thing. I looked at the indicator, and for me what I do is I select one and then select the next one to determine if there's any difference. There wasn't any difference in these, so I said that that's okay. Originally, when I wanted to move from this document to this document, I assigned a step number and I put it on a repeat. So I told it loop this process as long as the step number is less than 12, so that I had 12 data filings. Now this worked, but what happened is it would overwrite the data on Excel with the next set of data. So it would compile an Excel spreadsheet with document 1, and then when I asked to do it again, it would overwrite that data. So then I tried it in a different way, which is where I'm at right now, and what I've been working on is I instead started scraping from this page, and I said, okay, let's treat this whole thing as a table, and let's start scraping from here and start moving down these rows. So I would have to assign it a row, and again, assign a step number. Originally, I had just for each row, but as you guys can see, there is quite a lot of documents, and it goes on for pages and pages. I only wanted the latest dozen. So I had to reassign a step number and go through the process again. Now, I haven't gotten this robot to completely do what I wanted to do, both because of the issue I was having with the Excel range, so I tried to change it to a date type format. So if you have a program and you try and run it, so this program will start running. It'll do much like the other one where it goes into the SEC website, it clicks on the company filings, it searches up Berkshire Hathaway, it searches for 13F, and then it stops. So I go back to my program. Oop. So it's telling me that my issue here is I don't have an issue, or I don't have an email address. Okay, so let's try deleting that and seeing what the program does. Oop. Let's try deleting that, because the end goal of this is to send it in an email to me for the SEC filings. So if I run it again, it stops here. So I go back, so there's no errors that are found, right? So I'm still in the process of problem solving. So what I noticed is that this particular program stopped on the documents page. It did not click through, okay? And it did not start scraping the other one. It did not start scraping the actual investments. So I know that although I don't have any errors, my robot did not do what I wanted to do. So by paying attention to where it stopped at, I know that I'm going to have issues in here. That somewhere on this data scraping and looking at these documents is where I'm starting to have issues. So I'd go through again. I would look at some of my variables. Okay, so I have different variables. This is much like any other programming. You can either have Boolean, you can have integers, you can have string, you can have objects. So, and you can also browse for a whole lot more. So there is a lot. So this is the point that I'm at now. So I have been testing this a couple different ways, and I'm still working through the process of figuring out which way I want to do it. As a student, you, like Tuan said, everything looks like a hammer, or when you have a hammer, everything looks like a nail. So I think that maybe I need to take a step back and figure out again, okay, so what stays consistent, and then what part can I automate? So that's where I would apply a loop. So the one last thing that I wanted to mention in terms of my robot that does work and does run is one of the cool features of this is you have, so you have all your activities, but if you don't exactly know what you're searching for, so emails on there, it does have a list of like your recent ones and favorites, and it also gives you the ability to search through. So say I want to send an email, but I'm not exactly sure what I want to do with it. All you have to do is search it, and it'll be able to give you, so say I want to work with Excel, right? It'll give me all of these options to be able to work with Excel. So maybe I don't know exactly what I want to do, but I can open up this panel and see what the robot can do for me. So I found that as a student to be extremely helpful. And then also this over here is going to be your outline, right? So this is my entire program right here. My testing loop sequence is also here. It's a little bit bigger. One of the other programs that we wrote, you have everything all laid out. And then you have the ability, which is what I do, is I split my program, my robots off once I start messing with them. So I had, okay, it goes to the website, it does what I needed to do. Now I'm going to break that off, okay, and start working here. So if this doesn't work, I just delete it and start all over. We'll start from here. So it gives me good stopping points to be able to work from, so that I know what part works and what parts do not, so I can move from there. So I will stop sharing. I'll take any questions that you guys might have.
Heather, how long have you been working with RPA?
About 2 weeks. Yeah. So about 2 weeks. So that does give you an idea of I mean, the learning curve is steep, absolutely. But it does make it very user-friendly. All the programs that we've done so far in the emerging technologies class has been pretty user-friendly. Now, I literally do not have any coding or any type of technical skills. I can barely get my phone to connect to Bluetooth. So their programs are very drag and drop and very simple for user base, which I think is important. I mean, I know that Tuan does very fancy things with them, but starting out and knowing the basis of it definitely is possible for students.
And you're able to download like the RPA Studio yourself, and I think they had Uipath has I think there's a Uipath Academy
Yeah.
that you can go, that's free. At least I think it's free.
I think it's
You can go there. There's a lot of tutorials.
yeah, it's free if you are a student. Cal State Fullerton's
Right.
an academic alliance partner with Uipath, so definitely the students get it for free while they're students.
Yeah.
So
You've got a couple questions in there.
Yeah, so I know on the Q&A, did PwC write the bot interface that you were working with? No, when I was interning with PwC due to COVID, we were interning virtually. So I did not have any opportunity to work with Uipath at all. Though, as Tuan said, I do know that they do a lot with Uipath. So April just said that as a student, we have, at least at Cal State Fullerton, we have access to like the basic program, and that is the interface that I started working on, and it just opens up a workbook and you move from there. And then Candice, you had said that what are good resources to learn more about RPA and Uipath Studio? Well, take a class if you have the option to. For me, like I said, we've only been working on it 2 weeks. So I use YouTube, I use Google. I Google a lot of things. And then I also try and find other robots and base it off of that. So last night I was having an issue and I found a forum and someone had uploaded their bot, and I looked through it to look at the coding for it. So April might have a little bit more idea on what the best solution would be to start learning this.
Yeah, I would say if you're interested in robotics and if you're in school and they aren't offering it for you, one of the best things to do is if you go onto Uipath and you go on to like their academy, they do have videos on how to learn. Now the issue really is, just like in a textbook, what happens on the videos is everything is cleansed, and you don't run into the kind of problems that Heather's running into because everything is already cleansed on the information that they present to you. So in my class, what I like to do is it's trial by fire, basically. We're going to the website, we're going to do this. This is what our objective is going to be. Matter of fact, the students this semester, their final project is they're going to be using a bot to scrape the data from the PPP loans from COVID-19, and they're going to be searching for, are there certain banks that did a better job? Are there certain states that got more funding than others? Did they get, money first? Or what was happening with these PPP loans? Because most small businesses believe they were shut out of the PPP loans. So they're gonna be using their bots. They're gonna be using Tableau. They're gonna be using Alteryx, all these things to kind of come up with their final thesis. And none of this is tested. This is all new data that was recently released by the federal government, by the Treasury Department. And so I like to do it that way because then we all share. In reality, we all share what the problems are. We all share trying to come up with a solution. And the students in my class, I've encouraged them to join the Slack platform so you can share files and you can talk to other students in groups and share your solutions. So I would say if you're interested in RPA, go to Uipath's website, download the free version. If you have a .edu email, or I think they still have some free trial versions that you can do, and then take some of their classes. That's probably the best way to get involved with it. Or you can take my class if you're from Cal State Fullerton, but if you're not, it's not going to work. Any other questions for Heather? All right, great. Thanks, Heather. So I know we're going to be posting that CalCPA is going to post this on the YouTube video. You'll be able to see some of Heather's work. And it may be a little bit hard to follow along because she really didn't show you the whole page, and the robot when it's done is going to be a little bit different than what it was. But I wanted to take a couple minutes here and kind of wrap up by letting you know there are all kinds of examples and all kinds of different things that we've done in class, in my other classes, in other semesters on the RPA. not in addition to scraping the website. Scraping the website's important, but there's other things that Tuan mentioned. So one of my classes and one of my graduate classes, we actually did take information for a company that was a bunch of K1s from partnership investments, and we used a robot to scrape those PDF files and fill in information on a tax return form. So that's what Tuan was talking to you about. Those are the kinds of things. It's repetitive. The K1 form, if it changes from one year to the next, you have to make some adjustments in the robots, but it's very efficient. And as you saw with Heather, when she gets done with her robot, that robot is going to be able to go, is going to be able to scrape that Berkshire Hathaway, those Berkshire Hathaway files, Warren Buffett's investment files, in like the heartbeat. It's going to snap your finger, it's going to be done. Whereas if you and I were going to do it, it's going to take at least an hour or two, and the information that comes through is not going to be nicely formatted in an Excel file. So there's lots of positives to this. Heather, did your second robot run, the one we did on the PPP loans?
We haven't started the PP. Oh, the ones for the, yes. Do you want me to show that one?
Yeah, why don't you show that
yes,
one?
Absolutely.
Yeah. So the reason I like her to show this one is the PPP loan data. Just one of those files can be like 850,000 lines long, and there's a whole bunch of them. So we wrote a robot the other night that was able to go to the Treasury Department's website and scrape for the PPP loan data. So go ahead, Heather, share your screen. That's good.
Okay. So I'm going to run it. Ooh. There we go. Okay. So like April said, we have data located in the payroll protection plan loans for each state and territory. So I'm going to run it so you guys can see what it looks like first, and then I'll break it down real quick. So this robot, instead of going to the SEC website, oh, I have to have the data open. Hold on. Give me 1 second. So the Department of Treasury has the payroll protection plan loaded, and it's loaded by state and territory. And I'm going to point out that there's blank spots because that does come into handy. And then what you do is you click on a state, you can access the file. You will have to download it. And then it'll download to your downloads. And unzip it. So we started a robot that does essentially that.
So the robot's running now.
Mm-hmm. The execution just started. As you can see, it's going to the website, clicking on Alabama, downloading the file.
The file it's a huge file, so it takes just a couple of minutes to download it. Did he get stuck?
I think so.
Okay, well, he ran the other night, so we must have made a change that stopped it. what software is necessary to be able to write the bots? It's Uipath. It's Uipath. And on Uipath, it's what version? It's like 2020.3 or something like that. What's our version number that we're using, Heather? I think it is.
I'm on 2019.10.5.
Okay. There's the question is, you mentioned Uipath. Is this the only software needed to be able to write these bots? You can use it. Uipath. What I like about Uipath is it gives you the opportunity to either write attended robots or unattended robots. Attended robots mean you tell it when to run. Unattended robots mean you tell the robot, I want you to run 24/7. So Uipath is really good at both kinds of robots. There's also Automation Anywhere, and Tuan mentioned another company that's got some of these bots as well. But Uipath, if you look at Gartner's Magic Quadrant, Uipath is at the top of the list in terms of friendly interface, the fact that they have both kinds of robots, ease of use, tools, support available. So we chose Uipath as our academic alliance partner for those reasons. But you can use some of the other ones. Automation Anywhere is the other big one, and they're very close to Uipath. Any other questions? All right. Well, I hope you all got something good out of it. David, I hope this achieved the objectives you were looking for.
Yes, thank you very much, though. There was a lot of information that I digest, and I'm trying to see if I can apply it to my own little mundane tasks in terms of reports I have to pull manually, though. So yeah, I'm excited to see what else RPA can do.
Yep.
Just quickly, have you known anybody that's using, any of your students using RPA just for, like, I don't know, like more like personal tasks? I don't know.
well, it's interesting you mentioned
bank
that,
reconciliations or anything like that. Yeah,
Yeah, I know PwC. When everybody starts with PwC, everyone's given a robot. They're given their own version of Uipath. And the goal is to let them write robots that can help them sort through their emails and take care of some of these mundane things. So I got a question, is the course you teach an RPA class? It's actually called Emerging Technologies in Accounting. So it covers not just RPA, but we look at Tableau and we look at Python. Heather's already written code in Python. And we're going to be doing Power Query, Power BI, as I mentioned, and Ultrex. So these are all the things that people are going to need long-term to be successful in business, because the amount of data that's being generated every day by most businesses is enormous. And somehow you have to be able to understand it, cull it, pull what you need, and put it into a decision-making package so people can understand what's happening.
Yeah, definitely. And I know
yeah, I don't have a distance learning version of this course yet, but quite frankly, since we're teaching it all online this semester, I don't know. Heather, what do you think?
You might as well be distance learning.
It would be possible, absolutely.
Yeah.
Possible.
Yep. So stay tuned. I might.
Yeah, definitely. Well, thank you both for being on here today. This is very informative. I think any kind of technology topic is extremely relevant for accounting students. So, and shameless plug for the next technology topic, though, which is Intro to Blockchain, which is on November 17th. Go ahead and go to calcpa.org/students, and you'll see the registration page for anybody who's interested in attending. It's free, so please take advantage of that. And I know that there's other programs and technologies that we will be covering in the spring of 2021. Tableau and Python are definitely at the top of my list. So April, you'll probably be getting a call or email from me about that. But again, thank you so much for your time. Good luck. Stay safe and healthy. Thank you, everyone, for attending.
Thank you so
Take
much.
care.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye then.